Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bob Listenby. I'm the first Assistant District Attorney on behalf of Larry Krasner at the District Attorney's Office here in Philadelphia. It is my great honor today to kick off the first of several ongoing weekly press conferences that focus on the four major tenets of violence prevention and prosecution here in the city and county of Philadelphia. Those tenets are, first and foremost, prosecution. Secondly, partnership with a variety of different agencies, especially here in the community. The third is prevention. We want to work on preventing crime so we don't just become reactionary and focus on things that have happened. We also want to focus on progressive reforms. Each press conference, we're going to focus on a particular district attorney program that highlights changes and innovations. This week, District Attorney Krasner is going to focus on the CARES program, and specifically, we're going to hear from the director of the CARES program, Dr. Myra Maxwell. DA Krasner is going to explain in detail what the CARES program is all about. I would like to say after the presentations and discussions, we're going to open up for questions from the press so that we can try and address any issues that might come up about gun violence in our city during the past week. I'd like to say it's my honor to introduce to you DA Larry Krasner. He's well known throughout the city. But for me, it's a great honor to introduce him. I had the good fortune of working for and being appointed by President Barack Obama on behalf of to focus on juvenile justice issues across the nation. So I had a chance to work for one visionary, then I came back home to Philadelphia where I get a chance to work for another visionary. A man who is a champion for justice, who's determined to right the wrongs of the past, and who's committed to develop a pathway forward so that we'll have justice and fairness in Philadelphia's criminal justice system. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to District Attorney Larry Krasner. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And thank you all for being here. I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge some of the community stakeholders, staff, and media who are present here. We will be hearing from several of them, and we're grateful for their being here. Councilmember Jamie Gauthier will be here, not only one of the young leadership in council, but a powerful speaker for those of you who have had the opportunity to hear her. Representative Joanna McClinton is our new minority leader. Unfortunately, she could not be here today, but my understanding is that Christopher Johnson will be here to represent her. We have Kazar Abdul-Kabir from the Community Solutions CDC, someone I've known for a few years and admire and respect very much. We also have Akhenaten Mikel of Black Men Unifying Black Men, an organization doing wonderful work in the city. Pastor W. Lonnie Herndon of the Church of Christian Compassion is our host, as I'm sure you can tell from your surroundings. And from our CARES staff and our DAO staff, Dr. Myra Maxwell will speak at length about CARES and provide you with some information about her unique background and her unique team. We also have Shakina DeShazer from that team. We have Ayana Green and Yvonne Nelson as well. So let me briefly cover a couple of points. We are very excited about the we're very excited to announce positive developments with the CARES program. The CARES program, as many of you may know, is a program that began with this administration. It had never existed in the DAO before, and it provides very intense support to the families of homicide victims, especially during the first 45 days of their dealing with the death of their loved one. The peers in that program are people who have been through the experience of losing a loved one themselves. And the value of that support is not just for smaller details. It is sweeping issues in their lives that they deal with as they suffer from the crushing consequences of the loss of a loved one. It is intense care that is needed at every step of the way. And that care is further aided at this point because we have been refunded for another 3 years. The program has been so successful we have been refunded. You will find outside of this building a couple of new cars. Well, those cars belong to the CARES program, and they belong to the CARES program because of the unique challenges that it faces during a pandemic. I'm sure you will be very interested to hear from Dr. Maxwell the details around that. Of course, the CARES program arises in a specific context, and that is, sadly, the context of homicide, and more specifically gun violence in particular, which is our greatest challenge when it comes to homicide cases. So I have an update as to what happened during the week of January 3rd through January 9th, 2021. I say the week because we will be seeing many of you week after week after week. This is the first of a weekly press conference that we will be doing that will not only combine news of the prior week, but it will combine information on specific and ongoing programs and efforts within the District Attorney's Office with our partners in the community and with our partners in government and others. The review this week of gun violence is as follows, and this comes from our data lab, a unique entity in the DA's office that is well positioned to gather the information. Last week in Philadelphia, there were 6 homicides, there were 18 non-fatal shootings. 114 cases were opened involving guns or gun violence. I say 114 because there were a total of 121 arrests. And of those 121 arrests, nearly all of them resulted in charges being brought, 114. The amount of bail that was set for the illegal possession of guns during the last week, the median amount was $110,000. The median amount of bail that was set for violent offenses involving a gun, not just possessing the gun, but violent offenses involving a gun, was $150,000. I mention this because we have been clear that we are asking for substantially higher bails for violent gun cases, and we are asking for substantially higher bails for the majority of gun possession cases. The usual bail we request is $1 million, but we do not set bail. The bail is set by bail commissioners, and these bail commissioners, time after time after time, are coming with bails that are far less than we are requesting. It has been an issue of concern for months, and it remains an issue of concern. All right. Let me speak a moment about partnerships that we have. Obviously, our collaboration with the Philadelphia Police Department is ongoing and, frankly, I think strengthening and getting broader. Our Gun Crime Strategies and Prevention Collaborative has our assistant DAs stationed throughout the city and the detective divisions assisting with the investigations of shooting cases. We are participating in the GBI Custom Notification Program that is based on the David Kennedy model, and more recently, the Philadelphia Police Department, the Commissioner, and the DA's office and I have formed a joint task force that looks at all the new cases that are coming in a given week and reviews them to see whether there are investigative gaps, to see whether there are lessons to be learned, whether there's a training that might be done that might improve the performance of either the police department or the DA's office in the future. That has been underway now for a few weeks, and it has produced some very positive findings in the sense that it's giving us some pathways towards all of our doing an even better job as we try to do the work. I won't get into all that because it would take the whole press conference, but I'm more than happy to address it when we get to questions and answers. Prevention and engagement. I just want to make sure that I mention our commitment to supporting community organizations focused on proactively preventing crime. We have representatives of those organizations here today. We have Black Men Unifying Black Men and its director, Akhenaten Mikel. This is a grassroots group that is focused on strengthening families, building community. The DAO has supported multiple anti-violence rallies hosted by BMUBM, Black Men Unifying Black Men, as well as engagement with men likely to become involved in gun violence. We have the Community Solutions CDC and its executive director, Kazar Abdul Kabir, which is empowering West Philadelphia residents through direct engagement, for example, Sweep for Peace. Perhaps Kazar can say a word about that. CDC has also supported our engagement with the community following the murder of young Zamar Jones. I'd also like to mention that part of our engagement with the community Part of our prevention efforts is our virtual one-stop job and resource hub, which will next convene on February the 4th, 2021. We've been doing it remotely during the pandemic for obvious reasons. And now, I would like to turn to the news around the CARES program. CARES refers to crisis assistance, response, and engagement for survivors. It provides trauma-informed care and advocacy to survivors and co-victims of homicide. CARES responders themselves have lived experience, and they engage with families at the scenes or close to the scenes when there is a homicide. CARES enables PPD detectives to focus solely on investigations. This was a terrible flaw in the system before this administration began, because detectives often, if they're going to solve a homicide, they have to make a lot of progress very quickly. And if what they're actually facing is a situation where the family has a lot of needs that they're trying to address at the same time, it is good neither for the detectives nor is it good for solving the crime or for the family. There has been an extension of funds for CARES, and it very positively impacts our vision for supporting it. We have $1.2 million new dollars for the next 3 years. The prior allocation, and this is essentially grant funding, it's not coming from Philadelphia taxpayers per se, was about $1 million. So this is an increase at a time when we certainly need it. I want to make sure that we don't forget young Zamar Jones, 6 years old, shot and killed in West Philadelphia in August of 2020. That we do not forget Sadiq Clark Harrison, 12 years old, shot and killed in Frankfurt in November of 2020. This is why we need CARES. This is why we need CARES. I'd now like to introduce the Reverend and also Dr. Ira Maxwell, who is our Executive Director of the CARES program. She joined the Philadelphia DA's office in October of 2018 as the Director of Philadelphia CARES. She's born and raised in Philadelphia and also serves as the pastor of Trinity United Methodist and is the former Vice President of the Board of Directors for Women Organized Against Rape and currently serves on the Board of Victim Witness Services of South Philadelphia. Myra Maxwell's experience in victim services and ministry dates back to 1995. Before joining the DAO, Maxwell served as the Faith Director and Director of Victim Services at the Anti-Violence Partnership of Philadelphia, aiding families of murder victims in the immediate aftermath of their loss, as well as working with survivors of other violent crimes. Her knowledge of the loss and trauma experienced by families of murder victims is deep and personal. She has lost multiple friends and family members to senseless violence, including her nephew. You can hardly find a more qualified person for this position. At the DAO, Maxwell has been instrumental in the creation and operation of CARES, a collaborative effort with the Anti-Violence Partnership of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, with grant funding from the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. Since 2018, CARES has provided that support that is so desperately needed. Dr. Maxwell?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to you, Krasner. First, I am very grateful to be here today because CARES truly is a part of my story. So in sharing that CARES and the work that we have done in the past 2 years has been phenomenal. We have worked so diligently and so hard with families of murder victims across the city of Philadelphia, and we've had such a dedicated team of staff, all again with the lived experience as the DA has so graciously shared with you all. But I want to talk to you about the importance of having a program of this particular caliber. CARES, at first, crisis response was kind of unheard of in the immediate aftermath in an organized way. Of course, many of us who started in victim services, which is a reactive program, we began to do this work just kind of haphazardly. We would show up at scenes of crime, and we didn't really have organized follow-up in the work that we did. So through the CARES program, we've been able to do not only make sure the work is organized, but we're also collaborating with other organizations and agencies to make sure that we are providing the best possible resources and supports for our families who are affected by homicide death. One of the things that I always pride myself on again is saying that it is not about one person. It's not about one organization. It's about many organizations collaborating to make this work for all of the families. Because again, families have choices. And our goal is not to take away their choices, but to make sure that we're encouraging them, that we're engaging with them, and that we're empowering them to make sure that the choices that they make are the best choices for them and their families in order to get to a place of healing. In 2020, we had, the CARES program has serviced over 828 registered participants. We've provided over 4,000 services for families, and we are staffed again by 14 wonderful staff. We have 3 full-time staff, and our other staff are all part-time. Each one, again, with lived experiences. I have here with me today one of my administrative manager, Shakina DeShazor, who has taken on that role, and she makes sure that our staff are doing things decently and in order. We also have our assistant supervisor, program manager, Ayana Green, who could not be with us today for personal reasons, and we are very grateful for all of her support. Both of them have experience, over 15, 20 years worth of experience, and they have continued to help support this program in ways that we just certainly couldn't imagine in the beginning and the first concepts of this particular program. Yvonne Nelson, who is one of our new crisis responders, also is with us. She's not at the podium, but she is here, and we want to acknowledge her because Yvonne is the person who absolutely makes everything work for us. She's one of the crisis responders that will show up on the scene. She's shown up at medical examiner's office. She's worked families through just the process. She makes all of our crisis care calls when we first hear about the homicide. So she has done an excellent job, as well as all of the other team members. All of our team members really take this very serious, and they are very dedicated to the work. I wanted to share with you a little bit about our program goals. One of our program goals is really to make sure that we are providing 24-hour crisis support for families. We're going to implement our CARES crisis line very shortly. We also want to make sure that we're working with the schools. Of course, schools are not in session currently, but once schools are back in session, we want to make sure that we're working with our school district because our children and our youth really need supportive services because they are affected by the trauma just as well as the parents are and the siblings are. So we want to make sure that our children are getting the best possible support through the school district and how we are supporting them with the other counseling supports that are available in the district. Our other goal is to make sure that we're creating a best practice in the field because this has never been done before. This is new. This is a new concept. It has not been done in this way before. So we want to make sure that we are sharing the best practices in the field so that other people in other district attorney's offices across the state, across the country, can actually begin to provide the same type of support. And we also want to make sure that we're communicating with those district attorney's offices that are as progressive as our DA is in replicating this program. And again, this program, of course, it is a program that is really reactive. But I believe that CARES can inform the work of our prevention programs, and we need to do that. This is really vital to making sure that we're working with our families in the best possible way and reaching out to those who may stand in need, especially our youth and young adults who unfortunately have not just been exposed to the death, but they probably and more than likely have been exposed to other traumatic experiences prior to the homicide death. So we need to address those things, and we need to make sure that we are working to make sure that they get the best services that they can, and that we are informing, because of course, we have to inform the work of prevention. The resources, we certainly need to engage. All of us have a responsibility, as we've seen all of the violence and the homicides and the gun shootings and all of these things. We need to make sure that we're thinking about the prevention part because we want our children to have a future, to have a life, and it is our responsibility collaboratively and collectively. Aside from the immediate response that CARES provides, we assist, of course, with talking to media, you all. We provide court support, housing support. We all have, again, been providing information to families because one thing families need in the immediate aftermath of a homicide, what are the next steps? What do I do next? I am in pain. I don't know where to go. So we're there to make sure that we're providing the necessary information for the family so they know what the next steps will be in this process. We also make sure that we are, again, engaging, encouraging, and empowering families through this process. Yes, 45 days does not seem like a lot of time, But I will tell you, it is a lot of time when we have workers that are serious about supporting families and doing this work. That means they are working not just 9 to 5, because we are not 9 to 5. We work very non-traditional hours. We get calls at 2 a.m., we respond to those calls. So we are there to make sure that we are supporting that family in the most difficult moments of their lives. I would like to highlight some of the things that we've done. We've actually been able to support families with getting water cut on, gas turned on, emergency food, housing. We've even provided family crisis support groups in the home in the midst of COVID. So yes, we did have to go out because we had a family that was in a terrible crisis. So we went out and along with our partner from the Anti-Violence Partnership, we went out and we were able to service that family in the immediate aftermath of their crisis incident. They were going through something, and we needed to be there, so we were there to provide that support. I want to share just this really brief story, and this is really how I'm going to end this, is I wanted to talk about addressing the anger. Of course, anger is really a serious thing when it comes to violent crime and losing a loved one. Most of our young folks and youth, especially our males, which are kids, we have to make sure that we're addressing their anger issues, because in the immediate aftermath of a homicide, they are absolutely angry. And in that anger, sometimes it leads them, or may lead them, to do other things, to think about committing a crime themselves. So our goal is to make sure that we address their anger, so we can kind of deter them and support the mothers and the fathers and the other families with helping them through the process to really be able to think through the anger and not to do anything that would cause them to either land in jail or they themselves become a victim of crime, and it could possibly be homicide. Of course, again, we talked about my own experience, but my grandson has lost 8 friends to homicide in the last 3 years. My grandson was one of those folks that could have gone left, but we were there to support him through the process. And I do believe it's because of the experience of all of the collaborators, our victim service providers, our therapists, and all of those who work collectively to make sure that we are not only saving families, but we're saving our generation, our young people. So for me, it is very personal, because sometimes they lead to substance abuse and misuse and other strategies to cope with the pain. We need our young people to be healthy and to be whole. And I do believe that CARES is a part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you kindly. We now have remarks from some very interesting and very impressive people. Rather than come up every time to introduce the next one, I'm just going to list them in order. There are 5, and ask them to come up in sequence, please. The first is Councilmember Jamie Gauthier. Next is Christopher Johnson, here on behalf of Minority Leader Joanna McClinton. Khazar Abdul